National Rifle Association has created a mystique about themselves, a mystique about their own power that is supposed to caution anyone who might want to reform gun laws that it just cannot be done. No matter who we are, no matter where we live, no matter how or why we might want to reform our gun laws, no matter what happens in the country to make us think about these things, we are supposed to be so intimidated by the raw power of the NRA that we cannot even take a first step toward reform. We cannot even really seriously talk about reform, let alone ever expect anything to pass. The NRA has created this mystique about themselves. They expect us to be enthralled by that mystique. The Beltway Press is enthralled by that mystique. But empirically speaking, that mystique is kind of hard to justify. You know how the SunlightFoundation added up political spending in this past election to see who got the most bang for buck in their political spending? It was really bad on the right. Right? The Republican Party's House Campaign Committee spent almost $65 million, but only 32% of what they spent went to campaigns in which their candidate was successful. So 2-to-1, their money was spent on losing. It was worse for the Republican Party's Senate campaign. For their investment of $32 million, only 24% paid off in terms of races that went the way they wanted to. 3-to-1, their money was spent losing. FreedomWorks was about the same. Only 24% of their $20 million actually bought the result that it was spent on. And the Chamber of Commerce, which is supposed to be such an impressive and unassailable campaign cash juggernaut, the Chamber of Commerce spent $32 million, but less than 7% of what they spent went to winning candidates they wanted to win or against losing candidates that they wanted to lose. Less than 7%. They were 93% ineffective in what they spent. Even worse than that was Karl Rove's American Crossroads, which was like the conservative politics marquee humiliation this year. Under Karl Rove's visionary Svengali leadership, Crossroads spending was profoundly ineffective this year. They spent over $100 million in the last election, and 0 of the candidates they wanted to win actually won. 0. Of all the candidates they spent money against, candidates who they wanted to defeat, only 2 of those candidates nationwide actually did lose, which means that Karl Rove's group, Crossroads, had a less than 2% success rate in their spending. More than 98% of the money that they spent did not work. It's not very intimidating, right? I mean, think about it. If past is prologue, then in planning for the next election, if you're a political candidate, you'd be very well off hoping for a Karl Rove spending campaign against you. It would do wonders for your odds, because 98% of the money that he spent in the last election went the way he didn't want it to go, was wasted. But even Karl Rove's massively ineffectual spend in the last campaign looks positively impressive, positively robust, compared to the right-wing group that did worst of all. You think these other groups sucked? Check out the NRA. The NRA's power in the last election, as measured by whether their spending resulted in the desired outcome, barely registers on this graph. That's why we had to put the big black arrow there so you could see it. 0.83% of their $11 million that they spent in the last election actually resulted in the NRA's preferred outcome. Less than 1% of their money went to support candidates who won or to oppose candidates who lost. More than 99% of what they spent was wasted. Their candidates lost. Their targeted enemies won. That is demonstrable, empirical impotence. But remember, we're supposed to be very intimidated by the NRA. We're supposed to be so intimidated by their raw political power and the way they spend money in elections that we will not even talk about changing gun laws in this country if they don't want us to. All of that NRA spending with nothing to show for it.